Hello, welcome back to my channel and another video today. This is a follow-up to my announcement I did a few weeks ago talking about having just managed to get 200 subscribers on YouTube, which is pretty amazing. I've been doing this for a couple of years now and just wanted to celebrate this milestone by doing an AMA, get some interaction with you guys, get you to ask me some movie related questions or about anything else. And a number of you have left me some interesting questions down in the comments here. So thank you so much for those. Also, sorry anybody that has left a comment since I filmed this video. I usually film my reviews and videos a few days in advance to when you actually see them. So if for any reason I don't answer your question here, it's probably because it was in between that time. So sorry about that. But anyway, let's get into these questions that you've asked. There's about 10 or 11 questions, I believe, here. So let's dive straight in. So first, we've got DS Daniel asks, are there any movies you loved when you were younger, but now you realise are not as good as you thought? And how about the reverse? Yeah, so one of the movies that's definitely not as good as I remember is Law Abiding Citizen. I watched that when it came out. I was a bit younger and I absolutely loved it. I thought it was this perfect revenge film. I thought it was really clever. I just loved the pace of it, the action, the whole kind of message of the story. I thought was fantastic, and hadn't watched it again for some years and saw it again last year, and nowhere near as good as I remember. I find it quite cheesy now, quite convoluted. It thinks it's a lot more intelligent than it is, I think, and the ending just sits so wrong with me. It's still an entertaining, fun movie, but it's definitely one that I, back when I first saw it, I would have given it a 5-star review. Now, no way, definitely not as good as I remember. And as for the reverse, a movie that's gone way up for me is Watchmen. For some reason, I guess just all of the themes of the movie just didn't resonate with me back when I first saw it. I wasn't really into comic book films when I was younger, great big long drawn out 2.5 hour, 3 hour comic book movie, Zack Snyder directing. With a lot of political themes and stuff like that. Just obviously at the time didn't really interest me, and hadn't seen it in years. Until last year when I did my Zack Snyder review series and ranking of all his movies, and it's actually now my favourite movie of his. I think it's absolutely fantastic and a must-see movie. So yeah, just completely switched, had a completely different experience with Watchmen when I came round to it this time. Colin Vids asks, do you have any favourite movie quotes? I mostly don't like to quote from films. Mostly.
We better get back, because it'll be dark soon, and they mostly come at night. Mostly.
Yeah, so I do actually have a favourite quote that comes to mind. It's from the movie Apocalypse Now, Vietnam War movie, where the general, played by Robert Duvall, says, I love the smell of napalm in the morning. It's a very iconic line, iconic scene for good reason, and I just love everything about it. That whole scene where you've got this general walking around this beach, beach shore with his shirt off, bombs going off everywhere, all of his men are diving for cover, and he's just absolutely lapping up this atmosphere, loves it, and he delivers this line to them, and it's just the way he's looking out into the distance, looking almost sort of disappointed that one day the war is going to be over. It's just quite disturbing in a way, and something about that has always stuck with me. So that's my quote that I love that comes to mind. Joshua DaCosta asks, I'd like to know what movie or movies were responsible for making you love film as much as you do. Yeah, it's difficult to attribute it to one movie. I mean, growing up, like a lot of people my age, I absolutely loved the Harry Potter franchise. I loved the Star Wars prequels. Not so much now, but loved looking forward to seeing those movies come out on the big screen when I was younger. Obviously, in my teenage years, I really became obsessed with horror. I still am now, really, but that's when my love of horror really came to be. Scream, Nightmare on Elm Street, all of the old 80s, 90s slashers, all that good stuff. But if you mean film as a whole, I think it was probably when I was about 18 or 19, I ended up watching 2 David Fincher films, and that was Seven and Fight Club, quite closely together. And I was just absolutely blown away by those films. I thought they were just incredible. And I went to seek out the rest of David Fincher's movies, and from then on I just kind of had a bigger interest in film as a whole. Like, that's the reason I watched much film from different directors, different genres. I think those 2 movies are where I really attribute my proper full love for film and where that really came from. IKP 1000 says, My question is, what is the worst, defined however you like, movie you've ever seen? You and I have seen some dreadful films together, sometimes by design and sometimes by accident. I wonder if it's one of those or another I've never even heard of, perhaps. Yeah, terrible movies. The thing is, I've seen some really dreadful movies where they're almost so bad that you can kind of have fun with them. Actually, Ian, this is my uncle that's asking this question. We watch a lot of movies together, and yeah, we've seen some absolutely terrible films, but I kind of get an enjoyment out of seeing really bad films sometimes. The one that comes to mind, though, that was just an awful movie, that just was so bad that I can't even call it fun to watch for how bad it was Jeepers Creepers Reborn. And this was a sequel that came out a couple of years ago. It's a fourth movie in a franchise to an original film that I really love. The franchise was effectively cancelled because of the crimes, all of the awful stuff that the director had got up to. It kind of came back to bite him, and he was no longer going to be able to make another film in this franchise. We've got this new director, quite a modest budget, 5-6 million. Seen a lot of great horror films come out around that budget, and this was an absolute train wreck, a disaster of a film, unbelievably bad. Like, it really has to be seen to be believed. I thought it was an embarrassment. The acting, the story, the effects, it was just a mess. And I hated the fact that I'd even spent £2.50 renting the thing. So that's the first movie that comes to me as the worst film I have seen. Green Terry asks, what if Eminem made a movie? Well, he did. 6th Mile. Watch it and do a review for it. Yes, Eminem did make a movie. I believe it was called 8 Mile, though. It's a very good film. I have seen it a number of times. Obviously, I'm pretty sure it's meant to be based on Eminem's life growing up, kind of his overcoming, living in poverty in Detroit and discovering his talents that eventually led him to be a huge superstar. So yeah, it's a really interesting drama. I thought he acted it really well. Came across very naturally, very engaging. I'm pretty sure he hasn't done anything again since, but everything about that film works for me. I think it's a really, really interesting drama. Good film, good performances, really like it. Antique Postmarks asks, have you ever walked out of the cinema partway through a movie? If not, have you ever been tempted to or regretted later not having done so? I walked out of Wolf Creek back in 2005 as soon as the maniac started chopping off people's fingers. I waited outside as my partner at the time wanted to carry on watching it. She came out about 10 minutes later. Yeah, I could definitely understand that. I mean, Wolf Creek, I actually don't mind the film, but it came out in that period in the 2000s where there was definitely an obsession in horror with those extremely nihilistic, very violent movies. Wolf Creek, the Saw franchise, the Hostel movies, all of this kind of stuff, the really harsh stuff. And yeah, certainly not for everyone, and often not for me, really. I kind of go back and forth. Some of it's good, some of it's not. But I can definitely understand that. I've never actually walked out of a movie that I've paid to go and see. But I did have one time where I'd gone with a group of friends from work to go and see a movie. We'd all were movie fans. I suggested we go out and see something. There was nothing on. And there was a movie called The Snowman being advertised with Michael Fassbender. And I thought, well, you can't go wrong with that. Great actor. It's probably going to be at least decent. And the movie was absolutely awful. It was so boring. It was so badly done. It was painful. It was actually embarrassing for me sitting through this movie that I'd actually suggested to people that we go and see it. After that, they were probably thinking, I'm never going to go and see anything that Jack recommends ever again. So that's probably the closest time. If I'd gone to see that on my own, paid 15 quid to go and see that, probably would have walked out. Terrible film. BC, my lovely girlfriend, she asks, which movie did you watch and expect to like but actually hated, and vice versa? Okay, 2 movies that come to mind. The first one being John Wick. This is one that I expected not to like and actually loved. I just heard about it. Obviously, it's been out for years now, but I'd heard about it as just being an action film with a very thin plot. Keanu Reeves in his 50s just taking out goons for 2 hours. With no plot, and I thought, it was not really my thing. I was like, I'm not going to like this. And once I started this channel, started reviewing new releases, obviously we had John Wick Chapter 4 that came out last year, so I decided to binge through all the John Wick movies, and I absolutely loved them, all 4 of them. I thought they were great, and had so much more fun with them than I expected to. Such an immersive world. Keanu Reeves is great. The action is really quite special in those films. Something about them are just so good, and I suddenly realised what everybody had been talking about when they said give these movies a chance, because they are fantastic. And the reverse of that, movie I expected to love, and that would be Us. It's a movie that I still kind of like in a way, but I was so disappointed by it. Absolutely love Jordan Peele. Thought Get Out was one of the best movies that year, one of the best horror movies we've had in recent years. Just loved it so much. I was highly anticipating his next film, and seeing those trailers for Us, it looked so good. And I came out just like, oh, I'm not sure I liked it. Just the second half of that movie, I just felt like it was a bit of a mess. It was way too ambitious. It was a bit all over the place. One of the twists at the end didn't really work. Just, so much promise and potential of that movie. And I remembered coming out of it just feeling really let down by it. Like, if I didn't know about Jordan Peele or Get Out and I'd just seen that, I probably would have thought it was quite decent. But expectations were too high and it really let me down. So that's the movie I'm thinking of. Buzz Violet asks, does your passion for watching and reviewing movies ever inspire you to want to delve into movie making yourself? It's interesting, actually. It's one of my bigger regrets when I was growing up and studying, never doing anything film related, because I've always done it as a hobby outside of schoolwork, all that sort of stuff, and didn't grow up around people that had the same interest in film that I did, really. So I never really thought about it as something that I could practically actually go and do for myself. Obviously, the pressure at that time to kind of do a subject that's going to end up actually earning you some money. And film is not often something that does that for people. So I never did it growing up, but it's something I love the idea of doing. It's just when you don't know many people that work around and stuff, it's like practically how would you even go about getting into that? I don't know. So reviewing for me has really been my kind of outlet for talking about my passion and my love for movies and doing something with film. But obviously if an opportunity ever came up where I could find a way to do something film related, I absolutely love the idea of that. So yeah, open-minded to it, but it's not something I've ever done myself. Echoes Through Time says, there's a Radio 4 series called I've Never Seen Star Wars, which brings celebs on to confess that they haven't seen or done something which most people have. The title comes from the show's producer and creator Bill Dare having never seen the Star Wars films. Are there movies which you really should have seen or would expect you to have seen? Perhaps they are ones that you're even embarrassed not to have seen. If so, as well as confessing what they are, please explain why you have so far avoided them. I actually have a huge long list of movies that I absolutely should have seen that I haven't. And every time I tell somebody that I haven't seen them, they're like, oh my God, how can you call yourself a movie fan when you haven't seen this? And every year I'm doing my best to try and shorten that list of movies. The one that definitely comes to mind, though, which I'm annoyed at myself for having never seen, and that is Schindler's List. And I know it's going to be an amazing film. Obviously it won Best Picture. I really should see that movie. I know it's going to be amazing. It's just a lot of my movie watching takes place through the week. When you come home from work, you're tired, slightly depressed from a long day, and you're like, I want a movie to enjoy, unwind and talk about on YouTube or whatever. And 3-hour black and white Holocaust movie, you know what I mean? It's not a movie that I just kind of think to throw on. I feel like I need to do it justice properly, sit down, set a time aside for it and really be in the mood for it, if you can ever be in the mood for that. And yeah, that's the biggest one for me on my watch list, where I'm like, I seriously need to see Schindler's List, but have not yet. That's definitely the biggest one for me. So maybe I'm not a real film fan, but... So thank you very much to everyone that sent me in questions to answer, some interesting ones here. Hope you enjoyed it. And thank you for everybody that has subscribed over the years of me doing this. It's definitely been a fun ride, and here's to hopefully a lot more over the coming years. So yeah, keep sharing my content with people you think would enjoy it. Subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching this video. Take care, and I'll see you next time.